What I was hoping to do actually was for each of the panelists to introduce themselves. And since we've all heard lengthy introductions in many conferences, what I prefer instead is for you to simply just name your company and a memorable thing about you. So in my case, my introduction will be that I'm currently with Outsized Ventures and UPMCE, and I'm also helping out at the Crick KQ Labs. And the memorable thing about me is that my first career was in astrophysics. And we'll proceed in the order of the people on this investor panel name, which is actually how it was on the webpage, so that should work. So Matt, fire away.
Hey guys, very happy to be here. I'm Matt Krisiloff. I started a fund called Sci Founders to help early stage scientists start companies. Outside of that, fun fact, I'm also CEO of a company working on turning pluripotent stem cells into human eggs for fertility purposes.
Gwen?
Gwen Cheni, partner at IndieBio, SOSV. The fun fact about me is my first career was modeling volatility on the trading floor. And I think that's why gradient descent in AI is like a natural shift for me.
Very cool. Peter?
Hi, so I'm Peter. I'm an investor at Outsized Ventures here in the UK. A fun fact about me is every career I've sort of done is one where people have told me it's a boring idea. So whether that was bioprocessing or sort of tech about 4 or 5 years ago in biology. So yeah.
Excellent. Stephen? Oh, Stephen may have missed us. So I guess Gwen's taking Stephen's role. That's fine. And then Nathan.
Hi, I'm Nathan. I'm Health and MedTech Lead at Capital Enterprise, partner at P4. And fun fact, I used to play games for a living.
Ooh, very cool. And actually, with Stephen not being on the panel, we all have a little bit more flex time on our agenda, which is rather good. So first, what I wanted to do was just set the stage a little bit by to frame the discussion, so to provide a bit of background so people don't have to explain so much. And the main point here is that the funds that are represented by the panel here actually invest in a very diverse range of companies. And I think it's helpful to sort of understand how, at least I think about the space that we're investing in. So there's different dimensions that are worth thinking about. One of them is, what's the application domain that you want to work in? So could it be biology, healthcare science, or technology, or it could even be operations? And these are all areas where companies that these funds invest in are active. In terms of the products that the companies are making, they range over a very wide spectrum. It could be drug assets. It could be a discovery platform that tries to identify drug assets. It could be diagnostics. It could be digital therapeutics, where you might have a tool that actually helps a patient get better in some way. There are also just straightforward data providers. There are software firms that are generating tools that might be useful in different ways. And there's even analytic services where you have groups of clever folk who will help you through some problem. Another dimension that's important to think about for these investors is the stage of investment that a company might be at. So some of the funds really focus on very early stage funding at the seed stage or the special seed plus that some like. There's also mid-stage, the way I think of investors as mid-stage, who are really interested in mostly the Series A, Series B level. And then there's late-stage investors who are going for a Series C or beyond. And the final domain that I think is worth thinking about is geography. So some funds are actually very focused on different geographies. And these are dimensions that you can think about as you're addressing what your fund is like. So what I wanted to do at this point was have, again, the presenters cycle through, taking about 2 minutes each, to just tell us a little bit about your fund. I want to know, where are you in the space? And can you maybe give one favorite example of a company in your portfolio that sort of epitomizes that? So Matt, fire away.
Sure, sounds great. Yeah, so Sci Founders was started really with the mission of helping more scientists start and run their own companies. Contrary to the model of science-oriented companies started where it's like a PI that's a part-time professor, we really want to help early career scientists actually start and continue to run their companies into the future. So historically, so far, it's been set up as an accelerator program where we give $400,000 for 10% roughly, and then work with companies in a structured program for about a year. We're also starting a new program next week, actually, where we're going to be doing custom deals for scientists as well. This program will still be very life science oriented. And a unique feature about it, though, is we're going to be giving all of the voting rights to our shares back to the founders, really as well in the spirit of helping scientists stay in control of their companies into the long term. And given these are so much more capital intensive types of companies, not wanting to penalize founders for needing to take on more money early on in terms of the types of control and investor relationships they have to take on and have complexity with. So pretty excited about this. We funded with the Accelerator program 7 companies so far. There are things ranging from therapeutics to medical devices to carbon sequestration type technologies. Just before this, I was doing office hours with one of our companies that's working on a novel gene therapy delivery vector that seems quite promising in a way other vectors haven't worked properly before. I think really the goal here is more so than us caring about financial returns. It's inspiring more scientists and seeing them as the technologists to actually be running their companies into the long-term future. And the thesis being that will actually lead to better translational outcomes than some of the more financial focused investors out there that might be pushing people to do short-term financialization faster.
Cool, excellent. So why don't we move on to Gwen? Tell us about yours.
Yeah, sure. IndieBio. So we've been around since 2014, 2015. We just doubled the number of startups that we moved through our program by doubling the location. So we started out in San Francisco. We just launched the same amount of lab space in New York City last year in the middle of the pandemic, but everything actually went very smoothly. So we have 10,000 square feet, both in San Francisco downtown, also Midtown Manhattan. So very centrally located for ease of commute for scientists and employees. We give $525K to our companies. And if you're a therapeutics company, meaning you're going for FDA approval, the check size is actually 2.3 million. So it's quite a lot of money. And I think it's to get founders enough data for IND enabling studies and even into phase 1. So we found that works a lot better than, for founders to face a dilution so severely at the beginning. I'd say that we invest very widely. So we definitely have a therapeutics track, but in addition, I'd say 10-20% of our companies are, so we've had 169 companies come through IndieBio. About 10%, 20% are a microbiome of some sort, not just gut microbiome. Last cohort, we had a skin microbiome, we had an oral microbiome. We have a lot of genomics companies. We have a lot of medical devices diagnostics companies. We have 2 in the cohort right now. So anything that improves human and planetary health. So human and planetary health is our mission. So it must satisfy that. But if you do satisfy that goal, we span quite broadly. You guys have probably heard Biomage come through. So that's one. That was actually Biomage. Adam was in our cohort 1 for New York. So we clearly like AI, ML, and software companies as well. I think picking a favorite company is like picking your favorite child. And I don't have children, and I know how horrible it is to pick your favorite child. So I'll actually mention a stealth company. We probably only have less than a handful of companies that's in stealth. Partly is because I don't have to name the name of the company, but the reason why it's my favorite is that it's a juxtaposition. It's a combination of definitely the biology side. It's creating cells that do not need certain growth factors to survive, right? So you can see how this has used both in cancer therapeutics, but also in cultured meat and many other areas. Broad applications. So there's a bio component. There's clearly a software component. Because you're gathering a ton of data to figure out what's the best way to drive cells in that direction. And also there's a hardware component where they leverage HAX is our hardware accelerator, sister accelerator. So Opentrons is actually a HAX company. They opened up an Opentrons, adapt it to their own needs. And so it's bio, software plus hardware.
Very cool. Excellent. So Peter, tell me what's on your mind.
Yeah, sure. I'm from Outsized.vc. Outsized.vc is a European investor. We invest into founder-driven companies at seed plus, so between a Series A and a seed round. We're also a generalist fund, so we invest broadly across science and engineering. So that ranges from healthcare therapeutics at one end into sort of advanced materials, blockchain, all those sorts of areas. Sorts of things that we've invested in that I'm quite excited about is companies in drug product platforms. So we've backed companies that have been looking at applying machine learning in novel cell models for the creation of new biologics in oncology. We've also backed companies that are looking at synthetic biology applied to say CAR-T in oncology. So again, I'm quite interested in those sort of second order sort of markets off the back of areas of unmet need. The other sort of stuff, coming back to my background before I was an investor, really excited about kind of infrastructure for biology. So similar to what Gwen mentioned, companies like Opentrons, we're really looking at stuff like biomanufacturing. We're looking at software plays. So we also did Biomage with SOSV as well. we think that a lot of the textbooks are going to be ripped up and rewritten with some of the tools that are coming out now on the tooling side, and we think that's great. That's great opportunities to create new product platforms, but also great opportunities to create tooling companies in themselves. Again, as I mentioned, we do C+, and I would also just add, we have a kind of strong kind of disposition for backing founder-driven companies. We really like it when companies are kind of trying to create new categories. So that could be, you are you're not just an oncology company, you're a tumor stroma company. You're not just another bioreactor, but maybe you're sort of integrating that to deliver a next generation product to the market. We really like those sorts of companies, again, kind of at the intersection of different areas, and we believe that founders are the only ones that can really drive that. We're not about just creating another mAb against a target, another small molecule. We're really looking for those sort of new types of businesses.
Very cool, thank you. So Nathan, tell us, give us what's on your mind now. Sorry, I had to skip past Stephen and myself quickly.
Yeah, so I work for Capital Enterprise with my other hat, and the mission is to stimulate entrepreneurship in the UK, sector broad. So we work on kind of pre-accelerators and stimulating founders to create businesses. But with that, we had 2 funds, and we was investing in health tech, and we saw barriers of them taking too long to market, tech investors not understanding the UK invest scene, not understanding. This was probably 6-7 years ago. At that point, founded P4 with a professor at UCL. And we call it P4 because it looks at the 4 Ps of Leroy Hood's paper. So anything that makes medicine more preventative, participatory, personalized, and predictive. That's more broad than historically precision medicine. So we look at platforms, electronic systems to make kind of the hospitals more economical, collect data that can then be used for personalization and precision medicine. All the way from diagnostics to drug development platforms to then kind of therapeutic. We've started creating kind of programs in different disease areas. So a large portion of our cohort was in cancer, and we've just started a cancer program. So that's stimulating kind of researchers out of 30, 40 universities in the UK, and we've got probably 6 institutions internationally, including Stanford, MIT, etc. One of the favorite companies, not favorite, but exciting companies, continuing on, I guess, the vaccine craze at the moment, a cancer vaccine company that some of the panel may know, looking at who they're associated with.
Very cool. And since Stephen isn't with us, I think I'll take a moment to talk a little bit about the funds that I'm involved with. So the companies that I'm not formally affiliated with any of the funds that I'm advising, but I'm advising for a bunch of them. And the ones I've listed here are Outsized, which Peter's already talked about, UPMC Enterprises, who are sort of a mid to late stage investor, who are looking primarily at drug asset companies, but they're increasingly interested in platform companies. And the advising I'm giving them is mostly helping them figure out how to direct their efforts towards data science-driven companies. And then I've also been helping out with the Crick Institute's KQ Labs, who are at the much earlier stage, and all sorts of fun ideas coming out of there. It's hard for me, again, to talk about favorites, certainly since I'm not actually an investor in any of these funds. But what I can do is just pick out a couple of companies that I think are cool. First of all, my daytime job is actually with Owkin, who are a data science company that are really aimed at trying to enhance precision medicine. So I think they fit very well with this conference. I'll be talking about them a bit later, so if you're interested, come and listen to my talk then. Another company I'd like to highlight that I'm not in any way invested with, but I've just been impressed with over the years, is a company out of Toronto called Cyclica, who basically have come up with a very clever way of assessing the entire proteome and identifying chemistry that might selectively hit some targets and have other effects on other targets that can basically be worked out. And they've recently done some very exciting work, taking the AlphaFold application to the entire proteome and applying that to generalize what they're doing. What I think is fantastic about them is that they're a platform company in the strongest sense, where they're generating lots of drug leads, and they also have a way of getting to the chemistry, which is a missing thing for many. And I just like the fact that they're thinking creatively about how to capitalize on that as they think about building their portfolio. So those are my thoughts on that. The next question that I wanted to move on for all of us is going to be in a very different format. Whereas we just did a straight round robin for this. Here I'm looking for a much shorter answer from each of you. And we've allocated about 5 minutes to go after these next 2 questions each. And if you answer quickly, it leaves time for us to come back and comment more and turn it into a bit of a chat. So what I'll do is I'll start the clock again at giving us 5 minutes, and I'll ask the question. And then if people are quick, we might be able to react to each other's questions. So the question I want to start off with, and we'll structure it by still going through the same order. So Matt, why don't you lead off on this question, which is what's usually missing in new startups that approach your fund? And off we go for 5 minutes.
Yeah, interesting question. Missing, I would say, so we end up dealing mostly with scientists that are very, very, very early stage. So they might not even have a company formed yet. They might not even decide they want to form a company fully in their minds. So one thing that we think is really important is that these scientists actually commit if they want to do this. Someone on the team actually be full-time, because these are such hard things. And because we want to develop the scientists and the leaders, we think it's really important that they're actually committed to this.
Cool. Any thoughts, Gwen?
I'd probably say something similar, which is 92% of our founders have a PhD. Embarrassingly, I'm probably the only partner on the IndieBio team, other than Poe Bronson, our managing director. I'm the only partner without a PhD. So I'm the weakest on science. So this is how strong our IndieBio founders are. And so similar to probably what Matt just said is that, they're just so good on, I can get this cool science to work. But me coming from 18 years on Wall Street, I'm thinking, how do I sell it? Who do I sell it to? What's the margins? What's the supply chain, right? Like, how long will the approval take? Is this a global market? Is this a US market? Will it get shut down in Japan or China? But to me, that's the easy part, right? The science is the hard part to fix.
Peter, what are your thoughts on that question?
I don't think you would get much disagreement here, Joseph, unfortunately.
What other things are people often short on?
Well, I mean, all I was going to say, right, is, I want to agree with what everyone said already. Definitely the quality of science that we see is fantastic. Storytelling, number one, thing that now is, and I think especially here in Europe, people are very, very, and kind of there's a spectrum across Europe, actually. Sometimes the storytelling is very, very poor. So actually you have to really dig under to really see the gem that's hidden there. And, and I'm not so worried about sort of like the commercialization for a lot of these things. It's getting that sort of, I think this is where programs like Matt's and Gwen's are really useful, getting that sort of mindset into European founders that you can do this, you can take this on, and then taking them on their next stage and get them to be able to tell stories about their business I realize I talked for too long, but is the big gap. Cool,
excellent. And Nathan, any thoughts on the question of what's usually missing when people approach you?
Yeah. I mean, agree with everyone. Around the communication, getting scientists to not delve into the science, especially when they're talking to investors. Give them an overview of that science, and then explain the vision, explain some of that kind of go-to-market strategy, where they're seeing it going. And a language that others can understand.
And I guess my thoughts on this topic are that, especially given my experience where I've come from, having spent a fair amount of time in pharma, I found that many of these companies have a future where they're going to be interacting with pharma in different ways, and very often have very little experience understanding the perspective of their future clients. So I think a lot of what's missing is sort of an ability to connect the goals of what they're trying to do to what a pharma company or future client might actually want. And so that's an area where I certainly enjoy providing a lot of coaching on trying to help them make that work. Also, many founders don't have a lot of connections with their client base. So one of the things that I think the investors can really help them with is helping reach out to their network of pharma companies, other companies that have solved this problem, and sort of help them navigate the space of connecting with clients in different ways. And any reactions to the things that other people have said and that we want to add to this?
That's definitely the struggle for our therapeutics track, is that, I mean, the CSOs are great, right? I mean, they come up with stuff that we're like, oh, this is so cool. This needs to be out in the market. And then it's on us to find a pharma lead or a pharma co-founder. So, but that's what the program is for.
Cool. Maybe a slightly different flavor on this, since we have another minute before we move on to the next question, which is, do any of you, and speak up first, whoever has it, do any of you have thoughts on what kind of person they should be looking to hire early in the team as they're starting up, right? Because usually there's like a scientific or technical founder who has some clever thing. What sort of person should they be trying to bring in, either to strengthen their team and address their biggest issue?
I have a lot of thoughts on this, but I'll let others chime in first.
I would say someone that you get on with and you can have an argument with, but still get on and get through. I think there's a big statistic where a lot of companies fail because the founders fall out. So definitely someone that you can get on with, share views, maybe differing views, and get on with.
I think it's really dependent on the subject of what the company is working on and the composition of the founding team too. Like, I think like what Nathan just said is definitely true of a co-founder. Like, that's probably the first thing to really screen for. But yeah, I mean, for more research intensive companies like mine, of what I'm doing outside of the fund, that stem cell to egg company, you really don't need business functions for a long time. You really need probably more other scientists, and it can look more like a research lab in the early stages than what a business would need. And I think a lot of companies end up hiring business type functions sooner than they need them, and that ends up morphing the culture early on in a way that can be detrimental as well. I've definitely invested in companies that, when they still have a lot of R&D work to do, they try and get some minimum version out for like a demo day type program, like a Y Combinator demo day type program, and it sort of leads them astray and down a whole pathway that's a long-term pathway rather than what they should have short-term been doing in terms of optimizing their technology. So I think have a good assessment of what you're actually working on, and then correlate the hires around that rather than what you think you might need from a business perspective.
And Gwen, you had many thoughts, so give us one of them.
Yeah, so I would agree with everything that's been said. The way I summarize this is the founder, the main founder, needs to have a lot of self-awareness in ways, right? So the number one way is, who can I work with such that the team doesn't blow up? However, it also has to include someone that has complementary skills to what you're missing, and also different from your viewpoints, right? So that takes a lot of self-awareness to know what areas you have and what areas you're missing. And you have to overlay that with what the company needs, right? And so that goes to what Matt was saying, is that exactly, I agree with exactly what he said, is that, when you're doing an FDA approval drug, until Series A, until you were ready to go into the clinic, you may not need anyone with clinical experience. But once you're ready, you desperately need that ASAP. So you do need to build those relationships right now, because those hires take at least 6 months. So it's a lot of self-awareness in many ways. Cool.
So we have time for one more question to slip in. And what I have on the schedule here is give us, could each of you give us, like, really quickly in 30 seconds, one tip for how a new founder should approach your fund? Right, so there are many things they could do, but just pick whatever is your favorite, and of course, whatever someone else has said, you should pick something different. So let's start off the top of the list again. So Matt, give me your one tip.
Yeah, I mean, it's really simple. Just send an email. We try and construct ourselves in a way that there's no gatekeeping at all. It's really just merit of quality of founder and ideas. So just reach out, and we're happy to engage with you.
Cool, Gwen.
hello@SciFounders.com.
Same thing. So I actually put down the URL next to my name. It's IndieBio.co, not .com, just .co. And the application, it's completely free. You just type in your answers. You don't even need a deck. I would focus on 2 questions, which is, what problem are you solving, and what's your technological solution?
Very good. So Peter, give us your tip.
I mean, just reach out. I mean, honestly, I'm always happy to chat to scientists, PhDs, master's students, whatever, about an idea they've got, or, I don't need a deck. It can just be a coffee. It can be a Zoom chat, but just take that step, reach out. I would say, do that yourself. Don't rely on brokers or and especially here in Europe, there's plenty of people that will take young founders and claim that they can sort of pitch you around investors. Don't do that. Just reach out to us directly, and always happy to chat.
Nathan, your tip?
Yeah, all of the above. I would say as well that a no today is not a no tomorrow. I think keep building that relationship, keep checking in. Even if you get the email, just send an update on every milestone and just keep checking in. Just keeps you at the top of our kind of minds as we're working away.
Very cool. And the only thing I would add to all of these is just network. Just make sure that you're always growing your network and keep track of your network, because it's especially for people early in their career, it's hard to develop the discipline of always tracking the people that you've been in touch with in the past. Once you start doing that, you will be able to keep your network growing. You'll lose track if you aren't practically keeping track of it. So that covers the main questions I had in mind. Maybe I'd like to sort of, before I sum things up, since we have 5 minutes left, what I'd like to do is just do one more rapid fire, like short answer question. If you think about the space that I described before about the investor space, if any of you could just highlight, what do you think is the area that most excites you for future growth in that space, and choose your dimension of the space as you like. So Matt, tell me about sort of actually I'll start with mine to give you an idea of what I'm talking about. So what I think really needs to be expanded is new phenotypes using technological approaches. That I think is the thing that's going to break apart lots of different diseases that we're struggling with right now. So I'm super excited by companies that are doing that. So Matt, tell us yours.
I think more complex stem cell therapies, so growing organoids that are potentially transplantable, or the news article that was making rounds this week about the pig organ that was grown and transplanted into a human, brain dead human, but still seeming to function. I think there's a lot that can be pressed around this area. Cool.
So Gwen?
I'm partial because I have a little too much machine learning the last 2 years. The intersection of biology, AI, ML, and with the help of robotics, whether it's high throughput screening or things like microfluidics, really excite me because that's a way to gather data very quickly.
Very cool. Peter, what excites you?
Well, I mean, if you're looking for outsized, outcomes, I'm at a fund called Outsized Ventures. It's neuroscience. So, people applying technology, new approaches, new types of omics, whether it's glycomics or proteomics, metabolomics, whatever it might be, to solve problems. And that could be on the disease model side, that could be on the therapeutic side, that could be on the diagnostic side. I just think there's so much kind of blue ocean there to do stuff, and so many challenges as well. So,
Nathan, any thoughts on what excites you?
Yeah, the starting way back. So I mean, the strategy of the NHS looking to do more predictive and preventive care. I think that you start from the top, and that allows the kind of below to move, which will allow for more kind of care in the community and remote diagnostics that we've kind of seen with COVID. And yeah, the interconnection of multi-data, so multi-omics, and the intersection, as Gwen said, AI, machine learning, and biotech.
Very cool. And of course, I should finish this by saying that all of the funds that are represented here, of course, are investing in very diverse areas. So each of these favorites are just whatever's on top of mind at the moment for now. If your company is doing something very different from what we just said we're excited by, don't worry, there's people in each of these funds who would be very excited by it, including the people who are speaking now. So just to sum it up quickly in the final minute, mainly the main thing I want to stress at this point is that I think if there's one message that came through from all of our panelists, they're very eager to hear from you. So if you have any questions, if you have a startup that you'd like that you get excited about, do reach out to them. If you can't stumble across their emails easily, just pop me an email. I put my Gmail here, and I'll happily forward it on to anyone. And honestly, I'm looking forward to conversations continuing with all of you guys. Final thoughts, anyone, since we have a couple of seconds?
I would echo what you just said, is that, it doesn't cost you anything to reach out to us, and you do gain some stuff, right? Is number one, you get some feedback on how you're presenting the idea and what the competition is, right? Is that we see so much deal flow. We see what's competition in other startup companies, but also at large pharma, right? And so that's insight that you may not otherwise have. So, it's free information.
Fantastic. And I think we'll have to close off with that because I think we're out of time, Grace. Is that right? Brilliant.
Indeed, yes.
Your time.
Yeah, thank you so much, Joseph, and all panelists. It was great to host you here.